everyone, this is Shotzi for the Rough Cuts on Sunday. Hope you all had a great week. Today I'm going to be talking about a really good movie that I always enjoy watching, and it was on earlier this week. It's called The Picture of Dorian Gray. It was released through MGM in 1945, and it stars Hurd Hatfield, George Sanders, a very young Angela Lansbury, and also Donna. This movie is based on the 1891 novel by Oscar Wilde, which was the same title, although sometimes you see it as The Portrait of Dorian Gray or The Picture of Dorian Gray. But the story is basically saying that there is a heaven and a hell within everybody, and a person shouldn't live just for beauty. What this movie is about, you have a young, handsome socialite who's a concert pianist named Dorian Gray, and his best friend paints a portrait of him. And so Dorian, he gazes on this portrait and he says that he wishes that he could forever remain as youthful and handsome that the portrait portrays him, and he would give his soul for it. And that's precisely what he does, because throughout his life he doesn't age, but all of the sins that he commits transforms in this painting. When he's a young man, he starts to fall for this torch singer who's played by a young Angela Lansbury. I think she was 19 when she filmed this. And she was very much below his social standing. So he takes his two best friends with him, Basil and also Lord Henry, whom of which is played by George Sanders. And Basil, he falls for the girl's charms. He really likes her. And then Lord Henry, on the other hand, who's a philosopher, a cynic, and very flippant about a lot of issues, tells Dorian that she loves him so much that he wouldn't have to marry her, because Dorian wants to marry this girl. And so he wants to do an experiment to see how far this girl will go. So Dorian agrees, and she goes as far as Dorian wants her to go. And then he just kind of blows her off. And so she's so distraught with this, she kills herself. And before he realizes what she's done, he writes a letter of apology to her, and he does want to marry her after all, but by then it's too late. And he notices that in the portrait, it starts to become mutated. So that's when he first sees the signs of it's changing. And he hides the portrait up in his attic. And after Sybil kills herself, he begins this line of just debauchery and decadence and basically living for the moment. And he just wants to remain beautiful, and he wants to be surrounded by beautiful things. And basically living for beauty, but as a trade-off, foregoing all morality and just basically the goodness of life. And everyone that he comes in contact with ends up becoming not really distorted, but they end up down a sort of dark path, a lot of times very tragically so. And so every time he commits a sin, the painting becomes more and more just disfigured and ugly and monstrous, and he becomes obsessed with this painting. And there's a lot of playing around with shadow and light in the filming of this, and it's filmed in black and white, which is very effective for the storyline. But also the portrait, when you start to see all of the disfigurements, and the initial view of the portrait is in color, so it's very dazzling to see. This is very, very well shot. In fact, it won an Oscar for how it was photographed. And it's a great rendition of the story. It isn't as dark as the novel by Oscar Wilde, but it's very, very good. It's a good portrayal. And it really discusses how heaven and hell is in every one of us. It's just a matter of your choices of balancing that out. So I highly recommend this movie. If you get a chance to see it, definitely check it out. This version, there are other versions from the 70s, which frankly aren't really that good. This, I think, is by far the best one, and I highly recommend it. And it also has Donna in it, who plays another love interest, as well as Peter Lawford. And I love movies with Donna Reed because she looks so much like my mother. And so I really just like watching her. But I highly recommend this movie. It's a great cast. George Sanders is awesome in it as usual. And it's a good watch. Good story. And for those of you who only know Dorian Gray from that movie, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, this will give you a much better idea of what the story is behind Dorian Gray, instead of that movie, which I won't discuss any further than that. So I will see you next week, and yeah, that's that. Bye.